A lot of people just see dark makeup, black outfits, and assume that's satanic. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I talk a lot online about how God has saved me from so many different things.
I feel like these days being an artist and a content creator kind of goes hand in hand, for better or for worse.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Hello and welcome back to the For the Glory podcast. This podcast exists to empower and equip the next generation of Christians in the industry, the music industry, to do everything they do with excellence, all for the glory of God. My name is Hainza, and today, guys, we have a really special guest, and I'm so excited for you to hear her story. Magdalene Rose is on the podcast today. Magdalene Rose, how are you?
Hi, I am doing good. We are in the middle of tour, and today is our day off, so it's been nice to catch up on some sleep and try and figure out where we're actually at.
Awesome. Is that the two of us right now in the back?
Yeah, I am in the driver's seat because it has the best lighting, so.
That's awesome. So how long have you been on tour for?
We started tour, I'm on tour with a band called Seventh-day Slumber and a band called Disciple, and we started this tour on October 11th, and we had like a week, or maybe it was more like 5 days. We had a few days around Halloween back home, and I only know that because Halloween's my birthday, and so I was able to celebrate with everybody. But other than that, like, it's been going since like October 11th, and we have our last two shows this weekend, November 23rd and 24th. So it's been a long one.
That's over a month. That's crazy. For those who don't know, Magdalene Rose does rock / metal music that glorifies God. And I just want to start by saying, like, I am so glad this came about, because at For the Glory, this is the kind of music that we love. We love plugging this kind of music as much as we love the praise and worship songs of the world. This kind of music that isn't as popular within the Christian space is so needed. Before we get into all the music side of things, I'd love to know more about Magdalene. So yeah, tell us a bit about your story, I guess, where you're even calling from, because I'm here in Australia and we obviously have two different accents.
Yeah.
Just let us know where you're at and a bit of your backstory.
Yeah, I think right now I'm in Oklahoma in the United States, but originally I am from Jacksonville, Florida, in the United States, and now I live in Nashville, Tennessee in the United States because I got married in April, and my husband, who is drumming for me, also drums for Seventh-day Slumber, and so bus call is a lot easier living in Nashville. But yeah, I started doing music when I was 5. My parents were really like supportive of having me and my sisters and my brother in lots of different things to keep us interested, but also to like round out our personalities, give us other things to talk about, you know, just so we don't become iPad kids. But so I started music lessons when I was 5. I was playing piano, and my sister started to kind of pick different instruments, and so my dad really wanted us to do some sort of cover band. He was a really big metalhead. He loved all like the 80s hair bands and stuff, and he was like, oh, it would be so cool if my daughters played in a band. You know, we would just do it at the house and have like our own little concerts. That'd be so fun. And we're like, what do you mean? I don't know what that is. And because my sisters had all chosen other instruments, my dad was like, well, you need to play bass. We need a bass player. And I was like, I don't even know what a bass is. I'm 8 years old. And I thought it was a guitar. Was so confused why it didn't have as many strings as a regular guitar. But we started playing cover songs. We played Skillet songs. We played Casting Crown songs. So like anything in like that Christian rock scene in like the early 2000s to 2010s, that was like the music my dad really liked. So we did that. We started writing originals when I was around 11, I think. So it was me and my sisters, my dad, and the guy who taught us guitar. And the guy who taught my sister drums. We would all kind of get together and write music, and it was just that for a while. We were a cover band. We had like 1 or 2 original songs, but we started to write more and more, and as we started to grow up, we actually understood like how to write music, and it became more of just me and my sisters writing with other co-writers or just on our own, and it became like an actual band, and so we weren't a cover band anymore. And so I toured with my sisters for several years. We went on our first tour in 2017.
What
Actually,
was the
with Seventh
band
Day Slumber.
called?
It was called GFM, so it stood for Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh, because
Oh,
there were three
nice.
of us, and there were the three gifts to Jesus at his birth, and so it's kind of a way for us to tie back our faith into our music. But since we went as GFM, a lot of people would ask, well, what does that mean? And we're like, oh, hey, this is a great conversation starter. This is just a way where we can figure out if people know who Jesus is. If they've never heard of Jesus, then we can let them know. And if they're cool with it, they're cool with it. If not, like, we'll just continue to play our music and stuff.
Yeah.
And Seventh Day Slumber brought us on our first tour in 2017. And after that, we started doing a lot of touring, traveled the United States several times. We got to go to Germany once. That was, I think, our only international touring. Or maybe we went twice. But yeah, we did that from 2017 all the way up until 2022. And my sister started feeling like God was calling them to different areas of life. They felt like GFM wasn't where they needed to be anymore. And I was super confused because I felt like that was my calling. And I felt like that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I just wanted to play music with my sisters, and I thought it was awesome that we could tell people about Jesus through that. And whenever they first started talking about that, I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is what we're supposed to do. You can't just give up on what God has called us to do. And they're like, well, I think that's changed. And I was like, well, I don't think it's changed. I don't want to stop doing music. What am I supposed to do? And then I kind of had to get to a point where it's like, well, I don't want to make them do something, especially if they feel like God is calling them to do something else. It's not right of me to be selfish in that way and not let them listen to what God is telling them to do. And so in 2022 is when we announced that it was going to be on kind of an indefinite hiatus. We didn't really know if we would make music again together, but I had called Seventh Day Slumber because me and Blaze were already dating at that time, and I was like, I have no idea what to do. Like, I thought I was supposed to do music forever. I don't know how to do music without my family. You guys have done this for a really long time. Can you just tell me what I'm supposed to do? And so I flew up to Nashville, and they just kind of had a lot of conversations with me, and this is your decision. Like, if you feel like you are still supposed to do music, then by all means do it. But, if it's just something that you've done for your whole life, and so you think that that's the only thing, like, there's lots of other things you can do if you want. And they kind of brought up the idea of being a solo artist, and I never ever wanted to be a solo artist ever, and I didn't want to have that kind of pressure on me. I just wanted to play music with my sisters originally, and then if it was play music with other people, it was always, oh, well, I'll be in a band, I won't be a solo artist because I don't want to do that. And they were like, well, hey, this is something you could do. And I was like, I don't want to call it my name. Like, what do you mean? Then it's all just on me. I don't want that. And so they were like, well, we'll be your band. And they're like, we'll bring you on tour for like 2 weeks. If you hate it, we'll never do it again. Like, we'll figure something out. You're going to school right now. Like, we'll figure out a way for you to do something with your degree. Like, if that's what you want to do, if that's something you're passionate about. Like, we're here to support whatever you want to do. And we went on that tour, and it was the most awkward thing to me ever. I'm sure, like, it was fine, but to me, it felt super awkward because I was away from my family. I was performing without my sisters, and it was the most, like, alien feeling to me to be on a stage by myself with other people. And like, I was always in a girl band, and I was the only girl now on stage surrounded by guys, and I was like, this is so weird, what am I even doing? But I felt like in that moment after that tour had like kind of come to an end, I was like, well, maybe I can do this, maybe this is something that could work. And we were just praying the whole time, and I took kind of a month to go back home because Seventh Day was supposed to go on a tour with another band. And just kind of in that moment, being home by myself, knowing that they were still touring and knowing that that could be a possibility for me, I was like, okay, well, I think maybe I do want to try this. I'll take it slow. Like, we won't go on all these crazy things, like do all these crazy tours, because I don't know if I can even handle that right now because I'm emotionally a wreck. But I would like to try. And we started touring then. And Seventh Day Slumber does like 200 shows a year or something. Like, they live on the road. And so they gave me a bunk, and I just started traveling with them. And, some of the shows were just Seventh Day shows, so I was able to take kind of breaks from performing night after night. And we just kind of did that all of 2023. I released my first song in March, and then started releasing more music, writing more music. And I actually had a song come out that was a collaboration with Spencer Chamberlain from Under Oath, and he sang on my song, which was a wild experience because it was a band I grew up listening to. All of the guys that play in my band listened to him, and so we're like, what is even going on right now? I have never done a collaboration with an artist, let alone like a well-established band that we all grew up listening to, like an iconic band. And like, we're like, what is happening? And then that song got on a really big radio station in the United States called SiriusXM Octane, which was a bucket list thing for me when I was in a band with my sisters, and we never got to that point. It was on that radio station for like a week or two or something, and a lot of people figured out what the song was because of that, and I think it got to number 15 on like mainstream rock charts instead of just like Christian rock charts. And the whole thing was mind-boggling to just be in front of that big of an audience. And like, it was within the first few months of me starting this solo artist thing and trying to figure it out. Then we released an EP in November and then kept touring and still touring. Like, we're still doing tours. We got to tour with a band called Fozzy, which is the wrestler Chris Jericho's band. We got to open for that tour, and Seventh Day just had me tour with them throughout the rest of the year, and now we're on tour with Disciple and Seventh Day Slumber. And so it's just been super crazy just to see where God has taken it. Lots of like bucket list things that I always wanted to achieve or only got to achieve once with my sisters are now like within the first year of doing this. It's like God is like, here's this, here's this, here's this. I really don't have anything to point to other than God, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not this expert in songwriting. I don't know how to do this by myself. I did all this with my sisters, but it was a family effort. And now, like, thankfully I've been allowed to tour with another family, and now I'm married into the family, so it's an even closer thing at that. And touring just makes you closer to people at like a super incredibly fast rate. And so I have another family on tour now, but it's just wild to see just the blessings that God has brought into my life. And like, it was just me in my weak faith saying, okay, God, like maybe this is the right thing to do. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll take one step, but you're going to have to drag me the rest of the way because I don't know. And God used that little tiny spark of faith to just blow this thing out of proportion. And, we're just finishing the second year of it being a thing. And it's just crazy to see, not just other people's lives that have been changed at concerts, but like my own life being changed and my own heart being transformed. And, we do play like a little bit of the heavier music. And so some of our stuff is like pop rock or pop punk, but then there's other songs that are just full on screaming. And so it makes some people uncomfortable, but it's like transformed other people knowing that there's Christians who make music like this, and it can fill that void that they have if they feel like they're not supposed to listen to secular music anymore, or if they came from that background and they are interested in God but it seems very boring. They see this and they're like, oh wait, you can be a Christian and be like that. That's awesome. I didn't know. And so it becomes more just kind of appealing to be a Christian. Not that you have to like sell being a Christian, but it diversifies it. And I think that makes it allows it to be how inclusive God intended it to be, because he came to save everybody. And I think displaying it in different formats helps people understand that a little bit more.
Yeah. Amen. I'm just thinking of that verse that Paul says, become as many things to as many people as possible, to win as many over. And I think this space is so needed. Yeah, what a story. Thanks for sharing. I love like pop rock and, I feel like Casting Crowns and stuff. I was raised on that, but more of the, screaming kind of, would you call it screamer? Is that like the technical term for it?
A little bit, yeah, definitely.
I hadn't really been exposed to that in the Christian space, so it was so refreshing to hear that. It's funny because we recently did our first Q&A, and in that episode, we asked our audience, different questions, and one that we got was, do you think Christians can make music that draws inspiration from fervently dark music?
The biggest thing is a lot of people are scared of it. Unfortunately, we've had shows canceled because they found out that I was performing and they didn't want me in their church. And, the outfits that I wear, the clothes that I wear, the fact that some of us have tattoos, the makeup that I wear, people automatically assume that it's satanic, or I've had people accuse me of performing witchcraft, and like there's none of that on my page. Like I don't entertain any of that. I think a lot of people just see dark makeup, black outfits, and assume that's satanic. And it really couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I talk a lot online about how God has saved me from so many different things. And even now, I'm starting to learn how to do tattoos. And the lead singer of Seventh Day Slumber does tattoos, and he's the one who's teaching me. And so some people have issues with that. And a lot of the tattoos that we've been doing are people who are getting them for like honorary purposes of people in their family who have struggled with cancer, or his Bible verses, or things to remind them of how God has rescued them from their past. And so it's a lot of recovery based stuff. And our music is heavy, and I think they've seen a lot of heavy bands just be very satanic, or just kind of disrespectful to Christianity in general. But it's also the same thing as saying like, oh, well, just because it sounds like worship music, that means it's of God, because that's not true either. There's plenty of contemporary music that is super blasphemous and sacrilegious and vulgar. Just because it sounds pretty doesn't mean the meaning is. And so that's kind of the thing that we have to tell people, just because it sounds scary doesn't mean it is either. Our music is never going to promote some type of evil messaging. And my music is about how God has saved me from stuff, how God has saved my friends from things that they've struggled with. And if a song is written and it doesn't have an overcoming tie-in into it, it's because I want people to know that they feel seen and that God suffers with them, and there's verses in the Bible about God suffering alongside you, and Jesus suffered so he would know how we feel. That's why he can be that perfect high priest, and because he understands us and he's been there as well. And I want people to understand that and see Christianity from a genuine perspective, instead of somebody screaming from a platform that they shouldn't be doing something, or that they shouldn't be struggling about something when they've never experienced it themselves. I find especially with like the rock and metal industry, there's a lot of mental health advocates in it, and you don't always see that in other genres. And I think it's because a lot of people who have been hurt, who have struggled mentally, they find that community in like the rock scene and the metal scene. And for us to be able to create something like that but tie in Christianity into it, it makes it even more of a safe space and even more of a place to promote hope and to promote recovery, because that is something that isn't always promoted outside of Christianity. People just understand that they're all sick together and then they don't do anything with it. And we want to be able to reach people where they're at and recognize like, hey, I understand what it feels like to be sick, whether you're mentally sick or physically sick. But at some point we do have to get better, and here's a God who can heal you, who can actually move in your life, and who can actually transform you. And you no longer have to have your identity in being the sick person or and being the hurt person. You can have your identity in being the person who has been healed, and you don't have to be who you were anymore. And so while it comes across as scary, there's a lot of just recovery and empathy that comes from it that people would see if they took 5 seconds to understand it. But a lot of times people, if they don't understand it, it's just immediately they don't want anything to do with it. I think that's the biggest thing that causes issues when it comes to this genre.
Totally. And I think it's not just with this genre too. It can be, these more left of field genres, or I guess niche genres. And yeah, it is a shame, but I think people are changing even like views around that now, which is good. And especially on the topic of mental health, I love just your, I guess, philosophy around that of like, yeah, it's okay to lament. Like, as humans, God has given us these emotions to be expressed, but there's also hope.
Yeah.
And I think that balance is so important. And the fact that you're aware of that and that you're bringing that in that industry that has so often, I guess maybe been really in touch with the emotion side of things, but maybe not the, light at the end of the tunnel, that hope.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about, even if one of your songs doesn't necessarily have that silver lining, it's to remind people that they're not alone. And I think we forget that even as Christians, like there are Psalms where David's just like lamenting and then it's just like it just ends.
Yeah.
And that's just where he's at in that moment with God. And I think that's beautiful that, yeah, as a Christian rock metal artist, you're able to do that and hold that space, hold that balance, I guess, and that nuance. It's so encouraging and yeah, so beautiful. I guess you sort of touched on it a little bit about what you find rewarding.
Yeah, I think just seeing people find their voice, seeing people empowered and encouraged, and sometimes the saddest conversations I have end up being the most rewarding, because when people are telling me the stuff that they've experienced or the stuff that they're struggling with, but letting me know that they feel seen because of our show and because of our music and because of what I talked about on stage, while my heart is breaking for them, I'm thanking God at the same time that they finally feel like somebody sees them and somebody understands them. I've kept in contact with a lot of people I've talked to over the years, and people who struggle with suicide, who have attempted suicide and now are married and have their own place and their family is thriving, and people that I basically grew up with because they were my age and they just ended up coming to a show because they saw somebody their age on stage. It's awesome to see people flourish in life, and I'm not always privileged enough to see that with everybody because we meet a lot of people doing this many shows a year, and it's hard to keep up with every single one of them. But every once in a while, they'll come up to us at shows and just tell you where they've been, how they've been, and just seeing that transformation in their lives is awesome. Recently, somebody at one of our shows, and they're married and their wife is pregnant now, and they never thought that they would ever be there. And they're like, I really don't know what to do because I wasn't planning on being here this long. But like, it's just awesome to see God blessing my life. And I think that's just the most rewarding thing, because you can see how God is working through you. And it no longer becomes about you at that point. And every time I start to get in my own head and start to think like, oh, is this even worth it? Like, I'll never get anywhere. This is taking forever. Like, I hate doing this. Something like that will happen. And like, God snaps you right back out of it. And he's like, this isn't about you. Like, I've called you to do this because I want to use you for my glory. And if you listen to me, if you continue to be motivated to do what I've commanded you to do, like, these lives are going to be changed. People are going to live. People are going to just be transformed. And it's not anything that I'm doing myself, because I do not have the power to convince anybody to do anything. And if I did, like, I would probably still playing in a band with my sisters. But because I've allowed God to use me in that way, sometimes I'm having conversations with people and I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just like, God, I really hope that you're going to speak through me in this moment, because I don't know how to give advice to this person, or I feel so sick right now, but I know that you need me to talk to them. And so I need to power through it. So please just help me figure something out. And it's those conversations, those make or break moments where, maybe you said the wrong thing, or you did your best, but it wasn't enough, or you felt like it wasn't enough. God can still use those efforts that you make for him, because he sees what you're doing and he sees that you're trying and you're putting in the effort. And that's where God can come in, and that's where God can work and soften hearts and open people's minds. And you really do understand that it's not about you anymore. And I think that's the biggest thing, just seeing people be transformed. It's the most encouraging thing that you can ever see.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. Yeah, it's all about walking our own journeys. I think, like, in this life, there's certain people that God has put us on this planet to reach, and that's not going to be everyone. Jesus, had a specific few in his lifetime, even in terms of his ministry on earth. And I think, yeah, that point of, us having those specific God-ordained encounters is encouraging when the going gets tough. And man, I mean, to be on tour would definitely, you definitely have those days, I'd imagine. I want to pivot a little and talk about social media. So you mentioned giving advice. A lot of our viewers are independent Christian artists in different genres, at different stages in their careers. And I think the biggest thing that, or one of the biggest things anyway, that people struggle with is social media and how to have that relationship with social media as an
Yeah.
artist, interacting with fans and, making content. Because I feel like these days being an artist and a content creator kind of goes hand in hand, for better or for worse.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
and I wonder if you could give anyone maybe listening any sort of advice.
Yeah, I think the best thing that I've come to realize is that so much of social media is fake. And I think that has helped me understand like how to have balance, because for a while I was just trying to crank out the content, and sometimes quality mattered, sometimes it didn't. It was just, I need to be posting every single day. I need to be putting on YouTube. I need to go live on every single platform at least once a day on different ones or something. And I just got to the point where I was so burnt out, I wanted nothing to do with it anymore. And I would see the numbers go up and then go down, and then my worth was kind of tied to how many people were following me and how many likes or comments I would get. And we are not created to be worshipped. And when we start to get a focus on that and our value becomes tied to how many people follow us online, it's no wonder people struggle with burnout and can't figure out how to recover from it, because I'm still recovering from it, and there's still stuff that I cannot figure out how to do the correct way anymore because social media has just tainted everything. I think understanding that none of it is really real helped me figure that out a little more, and helped me put more emphasis on real people in my life. And I'm creating content that I would hope the people that I travel with on tour would find funny. And if nobody else thinks it's funny, nobody else laughs at it, like, it's totally fine, because I thought it was funny, and my husband thought it was funny, and everybody in Seventh Day Slumber thought it was funny, and they shared it to their pages, and that's all that really matters. And I'm now making content that I'm happy with, and I'm happy to have out, and I'm happy to see people's reactions. And it's not like, oh, well, if my video only gets 100 views, like, I might as well just take it down. And I just wasted 4 hours of my day editing that. And, like, I feel super guilty now because I have no time to work on something else. And I don't have time to even be present with people in my life because I need to figure out a video that will do well. And it's like this rat race that you will never win. And when you can break out of that cycle, it becomes fun again, and it becomes free again. And instead of being worried about, like, I need to follow the trends, and if I say something about God, maybe it won't do so well, so I'll just make it about music instead. It's like, well, no, I'm going to share my story online, and if people don't like it, that's on them. Like, this is what has happened to me, and I believe in God, and I think that God is the only way for salvation, so why wouldn't I share that? I'm just damning these people to hell if I don't tell them. Like, how much do I have to hate a person to not tell them the way to have eternal life and the way to have hope and peace? And so I just started sharing my story online, and talking to people, telling them that they don't have to identify with their failures or their mistakes or their past or their hurt anymore. And people are watching me kind of recover online from a lot of things, and I think it's helping them find a voice too. And the stakes they don't seem as high now. And yeah, like, it's disappointing when you see people unfollow you, but, like, you don't know those people in real life, and, like, your value shouldn't be tied to a number anyway. And so I think the biggest advice is just learning how to be present with the people that are in your life, and putting a priority on that. And yeah, it's important to have content, to have videos, but make it about your story. Don't worry about these trends, because they come and go, and your video might get 1,000 views one day and then 1 view the next day. And, like, that is the biggest emotional roller coaster ever, and it is the most defeating thing to experience. And learn to stop looking at the numbers. Like, make your content that you have to, like, promote your music or promote your story and talking about it online, post it, and then leave it alone. Like, quit checking it every 30 minutes to see if it's done anything, to see if it's gone viral. Like, you gotta stop putting the emphasis on that. The emphasis is that you're sharing your story, you're sharing what God has done in your life. And if even one person sees that and their life has changed because of that, you're doing God's will. And God is so happy that another person is going to be joining him in heaven because of that. And, I think that's just changed the game for me. And just really aligning myself with these numbers don't really matter. And, I need to make stuff to promote my songs and to promote my store. Like, everybody's got to do that. But it doesn't become so, like, harsh when it doesn't do well. And, just make a community online. Talk to people. Don't act like this big famous celebrity that can't answer all the comments and you only have 4 comments. And it's like, these people, if they're interacting with your stuff, like, give them the time of day because they gave you the time of day. And people aren't gonna want to listen to you or talk to you or care about you if you don't care about them back. And, I try to make it a goal to respond to as many people as I can, and be as nice as I can in the comments. If there's rude comments or troll comments, I normally ignore them. Sometimes I get a little, like, out of my shell and I'll answer, and I know, like, after I post, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, that's stupid, and I'll go and delete it. Or, like, somebody will see it, I'm like, oh, that was so dumb, I should not have done that. But make a community online. If you want people to care about you, care about them first. That's what Jesus has called us to do. The whole world turned on him and he still died for us. So, like, the least you can do is answer somebody and give them the time of day. So yeah, I think those are the biggest things that have helped me just try and stop at least continuing the cycle of burnout while I try and crawl out of it.
Yeah. No, there's so much gold there, I feel, and it is that balance. I think that's something that I'm noticing as you're speaking. It's like, yeah, it's, I guess, unfortunately for some people maybe who don't like social media, something that you do have to sort of do these days. But I love what you said about having that real community around you as well of music people. And it's so cool that you have had that in your life. Yeah, I mean, maybe artists listening feel like they don't have that, because they're not on tour and they don't know other artists. But I think having that tight-knit community in person, first and foremost, is so important. Like, you can't replace that with a social media community. And I love how you mentioned, it's like you're trying to build this community there, but it's not like the main place where you feel fed and where you're able to give to others in terms of value and stuff like that. So I think that's really good advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. It's tricky. I think everyone has a different relationship with social media, and it's like, the amount of good it can do is matched by the amount of bad it can do. And
for sure.
Yeah, we all have those moments where the Holy Spirit is like, yeah, you shouldn't have commented that, or like, you've been scrolling for way too long, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just like, anything. You've just got to ask God to give you wisdom and continue doing it. And it's cool that you're at a place where, you say you're creating from a place of like feeling free. And I think that's beautiful. And I think if we could all, like, as artists in the music industry, create from that place where God has already like given us freedom in Jesus. So like, we can create out of that place of knowing our worth, knowing our value, that it's not, determined by any amount of views and stuff. And then you can just, create fun content, and you can have fun doing it, which is the goal of it all. Like, even with our relationship with God and doing, ministry and chasing after our callings, like, there's an aspect of, I guess, picking up your cross, but like, that becomes a delight, after a certain period of time. And so, that's really cool. I want to talk about something before we finish up, and it's your newest song that was released in September, I believe, Teeth Eater. This is the first song I heard from you. Guys, if you haven't seen the cover, go and check it out. It's such a cool cover. I'd love to hear more about that and more about the song in general. What was that song about?
Yeah, so normally with songs, it's like, that's the first thing people want to talk about. It's like, listen to this new song I just wrote. This is the story behind it. I'm so excited to play music. I'm so excited to have this. But this song, when I wrote it, like, the idea was exciting at first, but when we sat down to write it, I was like, oh crap, I don't want people to know that I struggled with this. Like, I have to talk about this in front of people. I've never talked about this. And, a few years ago, I was struggling with an eating disorder called anorexia. And, I was struggling with body dysmorphia. I felt like I needed to starve myself to feel valuable, to feel beautiful. And, growing up online, while I was growing up, was kind of like the boom of social media. And so just everyone is putting out their highlight reel of their life, and people are like, have so much more access to things that a 12-year-old can't get access to. You're a 12-year-old just still growing into yourself. And by the time I was 16 or 17, I was so insecure. I had so many body image issues, just comparing myself to people online, not understanding how Photoshop works and how filters work. And, it was just weird when you look in a mirror and people are telling you, hey, you're getting really skinny. I grew up the skinny kid, and hey, you need to eat, but not feeling that way when you look in the mirror, feeling like you are ugly, and feeling like, well, I don't look like this person online, so I need to stop eating. And that's the only way that I can feel beautiful and valuable. And it's such a warped way to think of not just yourself, but humanity. And, I didn't understand how bad it really was until my dad helped pull me out of it. He tried to talk to me a few times and encourage me to eat and let me know that he could kind of see something there, but I think he was waiting to see if I would kind of pull out on my own, and I didn't. And, my body was starting to shut down. He could tell I was getting really sick. My clothes didn't fit anymore, and it was to the point where it was like, it's noticeable. Like, there's no denying that you have an eating disorder. And he was the first one to really talk to me in a way that was like he didn't pull the punches. And he was like, if you continue going down this road, you will die, and I don't want you to. I don't want to lose you. And he's like, I don't know if you understand how serious eating disorders are. Like, you're starving yourself. Your body is not going to last if you continue doing this. Like, there's not a way that if you keep starving yourself that you recover. Like, that just doesn't happen. And I think that scared some sense into me, because I was like, well, I don't feel beautiful. Like, I was just doing this to feel good about myself. I didn't know you could die. And just having him kind of speak to me in a way where it was like, we're gonna get you help. That wasn't really an option of like, if I wanted to or not. He's like, one way or another, you're going to get better. We're going to try here with us. And if that doesn't work, you have to promise me that you will go to a rehab facility for people with eating disorders. And, I'm not going to lose you. And I had never been anywhere for fun by myself, let alone like a rehab center. And that scared me really bad, to have to go somewhere by myself. And so for a long time, that was pushing me to get better, because I just didn't want to be sent off somewhere. And he had like a meal plan for me and helped me understand like why you eat certain foods, and if I really wanted to like eat a certain type of food or like not look a certain way or whatever, he's like, well, this is how you eat healthy food. This is how you fuel your body. You can't just eat a bunch of junk food and expect, especially now as you're trying to gain weight, trying to let your body heal. Like, you can't just fuel it with a bunch of crap, because that's not going to work either. You're just going to get sick. And, I started to gain weight and become just at a regular healthy weight again. And while my body was working and fixing itself, I was still mentally just not there. And I still, like, it was worse for a while, because, my brain was telling me, you need to stop eating. You look ugly. You are, like, so disgusting by doing what we're telling you not to do. But my body was saying, hey, we need to eat. Like, we need sustenance now. Like, now that we are getting a taste of what it means to be healthy again, like, you need to do this. And so it was kind of a civil war between my body and my brain, and I just hated what I was doing. And I started talking to Blaise, who's my husband now. We were just friends at that point. We weren't even dating. And he asked me if I had talked to God about it. And, you know, he could see that I was just really struggling. It was getting kind of worse. And I was like, no, I don't think, why would I talk to God about that? Like, I'm just angry with him right now because I just feel terrible. And he was like, well, why not talk about that with God? And he's like, your own earthly father cares this much about you to pull you back from the edge. Why would your heavenly father not care like 1 billion times more than that about your well-being? And I was like, I don't know, I'm just angry at him and it's just not working. And he's like, he kept pushing me to talk to God about it. And I really didn't want to. And I think after a while of him trying to convince me to pray about it, to talk to God about it, be open with God about it, I started to understand that even though I told people, yeah, I'm trying to get better, yeah, I want to get better, deep down I didn't want to. And that was keeping me from like getting a solution and getting better, because my brain was still fighting everything I wanted to say I wanted to do. And so I started to talk to God about it, and I just remember filling up notebooks and notebooks of prayers and crying and being angry with God and letting him know just how angry I was, and then just crying with him and asking him why this hurt so much and why I couldn't get better. And because of that, my brain started to heal then, and I allowed God into that healing moment. And once God entered the picture, everything changed. And when I talk about it online or I talk about it at shows, like, there's only so much time I have to talk about it. So it's like, okay, yeah, and then everything got better. And it's like, well, no, it took several years for me to fully break out of that. You have to kind of reprogram your brain, and, your body has to heal. And there's still times where, you relapse, and then that makes you feel really guilty. And so then you fall back into it even worse sometimes. But, I was able to finally fully come out of it and fully recover. And I didn't really talk about it online because it was the weird thing to talk about. And like, it was kind of this unspoken thing where it's like, okay, she looked really sick for a while, but now she looks fine. So like, no one's going to talk about it. And I had gotten to a point now with my own music where I wanted to write about things that were personal to me and write about things that I had personally gone through. And I felt okay with talking about it in depth. And at least I thought I did. And then when I started writing about it, it became this kind of scary thing to talk about again. And I started doing interviews telling people about the song, and started performing and talking about the song on stage, and just kind of speaking life into other people and letting them know recovery is possible and healing is possible, and your identity and your worth doesn't have to be tied to a number on a scale or the size that you wear. And the more I talked about it, things that I thought I had completely recovered from, I started just seeing even more transformation in my life. And, I could tell when I would start to slip back into, eating disorder thinking, and I would have to kind of fight through that. But now talking about it even more, it's like that happens less and less. And I thought that was something that I would continue to struggle with for the rest of my life. And it's becoming very apparent that it's not. And it's just fading more and more as I speak more about it. And, I've been able to have conversations with young women and even men who are coming up and talking to me and letting me know that it's given them a voice to talk about it, and they feel seen because somebody else is talking about the weird thing that they have or that they've recovered from. And, everything about it was tied to teeth, and I just like weird stuff. So that was kind of the initial thought. But, when it comes to eating disorders, when your body starts to shut down and when you're not feeding yourself, your body starts to eat itself. And a lot of times the first thing that goes are your teeth. You know, they either start to decay because your body is literally eating the calcium in your teeth, or if you struggle with bulimia, you know, because of all the stomach acid that is constantly in your mouth, your teeth are starting to rot. And thankfully I never lost any teeth, but they're a little thin in some of the spaces, and I have to be careful with how I eat some stuff, because it's like it hurts to eat certain hot foods or cold foods. And thankfully I never completely lost any teeth, but that's why everything is revolved around teeth, because it's something that not a lot of people know. But it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. What does that mean? And it's like, oh yeah, hey, look, this is this lighthearted looking picture, but let me tell you how crazy lore comes with it. And like, but it's just opened up that conversation. And, you know, I even, because of like talking about it online, I wanted to have something for people to feel like even more of a community with it, especially if they were currently struggling or currently trying to break out of that cycle. And, you know, we were just thinking of people who get semicolon tattoos for people who have struggled with suicide, and they get a semicolon to remind themselves that their story's not over. And so we started to get people to join us in getting teeth tattoos. And so I have a tooth, my husband has a tooth. I've had the honor of tattooing several teeth on other people, and just to like signify like, hey, I've struggled with this, but that's not who I am anymore. And this was a part of my life, but I've now overcome that, or I'm working on overcoming it, or I want to start to overcome it. And, you know, if people see it and think, oh, hey, I know what that means, and that's cool that I'm not the only one who struggles with that, because it is a very isolating thing, because it's the weird thing nobody wants to talk about, and there's so much kind of secrecy involved with it. And just putting it out in the open like that removes all of that, and it kind of removes the shame that comes with it, because shame is not from God, and it's just a tool that the enemy uses to try and wedge that guilt between us and keep us away from God. And the more we can do to get rid of shame, the more recovery is able to come in and take place with that. And it's just been awesome to see a community of people rise up to it, and just a lot of people sharing their stories online or sharing their stories with me. And it's just been awesome to see the reaction to it for something that I was super scared to talk about online. Never thought that I would talk about it online. And I kind of got to a point where it's like, if I have to be the weird person to talk about it so that other people can talk about it, like, I guess it'll be me. Like,
So good. Thank you so much for sharing that. What's coming up for Magdalene Rose?
there is a lot. We're kind of taking the last of December off to figure out release dates and just scheduling for everything that is on its way. There is an album completely written and all the way done. We just are waiting on some mixing and mastering, and then we can start packaging it up and getting things ready, waiting on the big boss man to figure out when we can actually release it and stuff. But there is a lot of stuff coming. We've been playing an unreleased song live since July or August, I think. So hopefully that one will be out like very soon in 2025, and then hopefully the rest of the songs will come not shortly after. But yeah, lots of new music is on its way. Lots of touring is being planned at the moment, and yeah, lots of touring is just kind of in the works and trying to be scheduled at the moment. So we are trying to get anywhere and everywhere in 2025, and yeah, we're very excited. There's a lot of motivation for this coming year, so everybody better be following so they can be part of it.
For sure, for sure. And yeah, your handle is it official Magdalene Rose on all
Yeah,
socials? Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, go follow her, guys. Who knows? Maybe you'll get over to Australia sometime in the future. I'm sure there's people out
That
here who
is
would love.
bucket list. We would love to come to Australia.
Yeah, yeah. But if you are in the States, which I know a lot of our audience is, definitely check out her music on Spotify, and you can also see where she's performing on Spotify as well with upcoming tour dates and stuff. Before we finish, I wanted to ask you, we have this little segment called the Putting You On segment where we put the people on to cool music. I just want to know, what's one song you've really been loving recently?
Hell is Empty. That's what it's called. Hell is Empty. And it's really cool. They're kind of bringing it back a little bit to their older style where it's a little bit heavy, but they still have like the high singing melodies and stuff, it was what I liked the most. So I'm very excited. It's all the music they've been dropping recently has been awesome. But yeah, Hell is Empty it's really good by Memphis Mayfire.